We thought it was important with the change in leadership for the association and the foundation that you get the opportunity to know your new chairs and hear about their goals for the next few years. So we'll bring out Derek Vick and Peter Ney in just a moment. But first, I would like to invite Dave Fitzgerald to join me on stage so we can recognize the tremendous strides the Employee Ownership Foundation has made during his time as chair. Dave, can you join me out here on stage, please? Dave has been involved with the foundation and the association literally for decades. And I don't want to make it sound like Dave is like this really old guy either. He's clearly not. But he has been involved for an incredible amount of time. And while I've always deeply valued and sought out his insights on employee ownership and his many contributions to our cause, I think what I respect most about Dave is that he is a doer. He's not a talker. He was one of the most enthusiastic supporters of ESOPathon when we first launched our annual fundraising drive, and during his term as chair was constantly pushing us to aim for even loftier goals. And both he and his company, Karis Reels, have always been among our largest foundation donors. Dave was also committed to leaving a lasting legacy we can all be proud of, and in that respect, he was the key driver of launching the foundation's new Trustees Scholars program. Thanks to his efforts, the foundation is now helping to make a real direct impact on the lives of employee owners and their children, with scholarships to help defray the cost of higher education, all while cultivating a new generation of employee owners who respect the model their employee owner parents and their companies pursue. I know I'm making him a little bit uncomfortable with all of this praise, and frankly, that just speaks to Dave's character. He's never sought recognition or accolades, and his only goals have been to put the foundation in the best possible position to continue its vital work. So Dave, I'd say that's mission accomplished. Let's give Dave a big round of applause and thanks for his appreciation.
Thank you, Jim, for those kind words. When the board asked me to chair the foundation, I really wasn't sure what to expect. But now, looking back, I'm so proud of what we accomplished. Working with this wonderful team and all the staff and volunteer leaders has made it really worth all the effort. But now it's time for some new ideas to take the foundation forward, and I'm so happy my good friend Peter Ney is succeeding me as chair. And even happier that I get to watch from the sidelines now. But this cause is so dear to me that I will remain involved. Peter, can you join us on stage? Peter, congratulations and good luck. You're going to be great at this, and I know the foundation is in very good hands. Ladies and gentlemen, your new Employee Ownership Foundation Chair, Peter Ney.
Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. And thank you to the Board of Trustees of the Employee Ownership Foundation for putting your trust in me. I've been involved with employee ownership since my company, EA Engineering, Science, and Technology, transitioned from a public company traded on the NASDAQ stock market to a 100% ESOP. We believed that long-term sustainability and growth was more important than a short-term focus on hitting our quarterly numbers. But we also believed that the purpose of a company should be about more than profits. That's why in 2014, when we completed our journey to a 100% ESOP-owned company, we also registered as a public benefit corporation, and we are legally obligated to consider the interests of all our stakeholders. Today, we are the largest 100% employee-owned PBC in the environmental space, something we're all very proud of. So my father-in-law, Lauren Jensen, founded EA in 1973, and I advised him on his decision to create EA's ESOP. He passed away in 2022, knowing that EA would live on, owned together by the people he considered his second family. It was his proudest accomplishment, and mine as well. So that's just a short introduction to give you an idea of what employee ownership means to me. Helping more Americans realize the dream of employee ownership and working for more than just a weekly paycheck is vitally important at a time when the gap between our wealthiest and our poorest citizens has never been greater. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter, and congratulations again. And at this point, I'd like to invite Derek Vick to join Peter and I back on stage for a conversation about the association and the foundation's outlook over the next 2 years. Derek, you want to come on out? Thanks. A lot of handshaking going on up
A lot of handshaking, yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you both for everything that you do and have done for the association so far. You can all see we closely coordinated our suits this afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be with the two of you here. So I want to start a little bit just getting to know you guys. And, you know, Derek, you talked a little bit this morning about your company, Freedom Industries.
Sure.
And your role at the company. And you've been both a CFO and a CEO now. And you mentioned this morning a 2,000% increase in value in 3 years. So just tell us about your company. Tell us about Freedom Industries and what you do and what's in the water down there in Rocky Mount that's resulting in that kind of growth.
Absolutely. So Freedom Industries, we're an industrial contractor, and we serve the pharma and food space, which is a real hotbed down in North Carolina. And we did go through a cycle about 6 years ago where, frankly speaking to this audience, we almost went bankrupt. It was tough times, and we re-energized. We came up with the catchphrase, and Jim would be proud, return to prosperity, you know, the short and sweet. And we were beating that drum, return to prosperity. The Freedom team this year was a large part of just helping to turn around the company, and we defined our target market. We said what we're going to focus on, and we've been delivering with our employee owners. And yeah, 2,000% increase over 3 years.
So 100% ESOP.
Yep.
How many employees?
About 200.
About 200. And what's the ambition for the future?
Ambition for the future, like most of our employee-owned companies, is growth. We want to grow. We have a good strategic plan to get there, much like the ESOP Association has a strategic plan. We have a 2030 strategic plan, and we're very mission-driven, so we're going to work with all of our hearts to get there.
All right. So, Peter, tell us about EA and what you guys do, where you're located. It's a really interesting story.
Sure. So we're a 750-person environmental firm. Everything environmental is what we do. As I mentioned, we were a miserable public company from 1986 to 2001. And I always like to say that EA tried every ownership structure known to humans. We were founder-owned, we were a public company, we were institutional investor. We had all these phases. And then finally, we settled on employee ownership, and that was the right fit for our culture. So it really took off once we got the ownership structure aligned with the company and our culture.
And now you have locations all around the country. How many states are you in?
We have 26 offices, I think is the latest count. So we're all over in the U.S., but all the way out to Guam. So we get around.
Wow. You go to Guam frequently?
I've been a few times. Okay. I have. It's an interesting place. It's a beautiful place.
Okay, terrific. So now, Derek, I already said you've been CFO, you've been CEO. What's your leadership style? What do you find that works?
I lead with passion. I think passion, if you're passionate about anything, it helps to rally the troops. And so my leadership is very authentic. I don't try to be a typical executive. I'm one that loves to just hit the construction site, shake our folks' hands, ask them what's working and what's not working. Those are the conversations that we typically have in the halls of freedom. What do you like about your job? What do you dislike? Okay, you don't like that? We're going to rally and we're going to change that if it's a good idea.
All right. So what's with the shoelaces and the socks.
Are you jealous of my style here, Jim?
I am.
Yeah, I wear mismatching shoelaces. It's kind of like an ESOP. It's our little niche. It's my little way to stand out and be my differentiator.
All right. Now, I know your family's here. I don't know if they're here for lunch today. I hope they are. But what's the story behind this dog named Aesop?
Yeah, my family really wanted a dog. I'm not a big dog person. You can shoot me later. And I said, well, if we get the dog, I get to name it, which was very scary for my wife to know that I could name it. We got the dog. The dog's name became Aesop.
Terrific. So now, Peter, you're sort of a study in contrast to our friend Derek here.
Well, I don't have any laces at all.
No laces at all,
I can't
right.
tie shoes. It's just, no.
That's right. So, I've always sort of seen you in your service on the board as you're a bit of a deep thinker. And I've always been impressed with how prepared you are when you come to a session. And you should all know, I refused to tell them what I was going to ask, despite their repeated requests for me to tell them what my questions were going to be.
Wasn't nervous at all.
So, what are your hallmark leadership traits?
I'm a nerd. I think that's really what it comes down to. I think that's, thank you for describing it in such a nice way. I like to dive into the details. I like to do research. And I generally, when I joined EA, just as we were going private, I was the dreaded son-in-law, arriving on the scene as EA's CFO. And my philosophy at that time was, frankly, to get the right people in the right roles and get out of the way, and then provide the analysis and support to keep things going. So I like to dive into details, but not so much on the charisma.
So I was going to ask that question. You married the company founder's daughter.
Yes.
So did the daughter come first, or did the introduction of the company come first?
I don't know. Should I reveal that? It's a
No, I
sordid,
know the answer to
it's a
this.
sordid past. No, I married my high school sweetheart. So I had already known my father-in-law, my father died very young, and Lauren was really a father to me. So I had already known Lauren and been aware of EA Engineering. I never had the wildest concept that I would work for the company. But when it came time to take it private in 2001, it was like he needed someone with a relevant background, which I did have, that he could actually trust, because it was a big change. So I was already old news, and we already had a
Well, and it certainly worked out well for all the employee owners, so congratulations on that.
best thing I've ever done.
So the ESOP Association and the Employee Ownership Foundation have had some pretty major transformations in the last 6-7 years. And both of you have been involved for most of that time in one form or another. And I guess I would ask each of you, what do you think have been the most important changes or the most impactful changes that we've experienced that bring us to where we are today?
I can take it first, Peter. I think the most impactful thing to me are the different levels of educational tools that the association has provided. Take the CEO Summit, which is a can't-miss event for me. Now we've got the CFO Summit coming up, but I know we're making investments in the Accelerator program, and of course the advocacy work, the Advocacy Academy that we had this week, and just getting laser focused on our initiatives to the Hill. I just think all of this bundles up into a nice service offering to the members.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, looking back at the last few years with the EOF, it's just, I think just like the ESOP Association, it's staggering, the number of changes and how significant they've been. Some things that come to mind, obviously ESOP-a-thon, brainchild of Ali Jamshidi, who's here in the audience today. That has transformed our fundraising process, and it continues to. I was actually looking at the numbers late last night and studying how that is our fastest growth, even as recently as last year. That is really the driving force of our fundraising effort. So kudos to all of you for making that happen. Then, to me, another thing that stands out is Oxford. I had the privilege to attend the Oxford Symposium last year, 23 countries, and here we are as the organization that is really the convener of the worldwide employee ownership movement. So obviously everyone's using a lot of different approaches and we're learning from each other, but to be at the center of that conversation as we kind of come together, it's just an amazing opportunity. Obviously, a million other things come to mind. There's the Trustee Scholar Program, there's the Executive Education Program now expanding with a new partner in the Darden School. I mean, we're changing every day. It's an amazing thing to be a part of.
So as you look forward the next 2 years, and you think about when you're handing off the gavel to the next person, what do you hope you can look back and say, all right, I did that?
For me, I think the key question is, are we reaching people like my father-in-law? I want more people to make the same decision that he did. So although education, research, those are all things that indirectly reach founders, but I think that's the key question. How do we reach those founders? Whether it's through education, whether it's through communications, all of the other programs we do, I think that's got to be the end goal, because that's where ESOPs originate, right?
Yeah. How about you, Derek?
Yeah, when I hand this gavel off to Steve Earle here in 2 years, I think what comes to mind first and foremost, I had the liberty to chair the Strategic Planning Committee last year, and we put in a lot of good, hard work. And the ESOP Association has a 5-year strategic plan. And much like you guys, we've all been a part of strategy sessions. You start off and you're flipping those white charts and you're dreaming big and you're creating wish lists. But then you have to get down to brass tacks and really say, here comes the hard part. And the hard part is executing. So I think for the next 2 years for me, when I'm handing this gavel off, I'd love to say, did we move forward? Did we accomplish what we set out to do? We can have big dreams, but we also have limited resources. So I think where my CFO side can come into play is helping us hold accountable to the limited resources and scrubbing against maybe the dreams and wishes that we have. But I'd love to see us move forward in the strategy. And the second thing that comes to mind is I just want to get to know you. I want to be very engaged with our members, both on the corporate and professional side. I could see myself being a conduit just to listen, engage, understand, again, what's working, what's not working, and then be that vessel to bring you back some feedback on how we can improve for the next 2 years.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. So, Peter, you touched on this idea of reaching more founders. And at the core of that is growing the employee ownership community. And there's a couple of different ways that we can grow employee ownership. Several different ways, but one of them is increase the number of ESOP companies. The other is increase the number of employees at existing ESOPs. Right. The other way is to stop ESOPs from, as we call it, the hole in the bottom of the bucket problem. Current ESOPs that terminate their plans. What role do you think the foundation can play? And how would you answer the questions like, well, why should we be playing a role in encouraging the formation of new employee-owned companies? Because after all, we're a trade association that represents existing ESOPs, and our member companies and our professionals pay dues. Why is it important for us to grow the number of employee-owned businesses out there?
Well, I think that's a wonderful force in our economy. I mean, it's doing good. It makes sense for the organization, of course. It makes this room bigger, right? But to me, it is the most effective way to improve the economy that we live in. And it just should be a driving force. And I have to resist, coming from the Public Policy Council role, because I immediately start thinking of policies that could do this, like the bills we were discussing yesterday, most significantly Senator Van Hollen's new financing vehicle. I mean, when I think about one of the challenges of an ESOP is that process of becoming a large company. And eventually you become a mature ESOP, and your distributions become a significant part of your cash flow. And in order to expand, you can't just bring in outside capital so easily. And this could potentially be a vehicle there. So I think all of this could drive toward just building the community bigger. I think that is why we're all here. We all believe in that. We've all consumed the Kool-Aid, as Derek put it yesterday, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've worked with a lot of associations over my 3 decades here in Washington. And when I have a group of CEOs that I meet with about once a month. And universally, they are ridiculously jealous of the community that I get to represent, because they are dealing most often with a group of competitors. And in real life, their members are competing. I mean, they're tooth and nail fighting for market share and pricing and customers. But when they get into the association boardroom, they are trying to do something in common, and it doesn't always work very well. But with our community, it's unbelievable how warm and receptive and eager existing ESOPs are to bring other companies and businesses in. So it's really exciting, this idea of us being able to continue to grow the community and also grow the number of employee owners through larger ESOP companies, through mergers and acquisitions, which seems to be a big growing trend. So I think that's an exciting area for us to be working in as well. So let me ask you guys, as you look towards the future, you've been involved in the community for quite a while. What worries you? What would keep you up at night about the future of employee ownership and ESOPs?
I'll defer to the nerd on this question.
I am very concerned about private equity. I've always been very concerned about private equity in general, because to me it is the antithesis of the ESOP model. You're talking about private equity, so stock owned by qualified individuals who by definition are wealthy. So you are literally pulling that equity out of even the public markets and into private. And then the thought of doing that to an ESOP, or the thought of a private equity initiative trying to capture the ESOP name or to seek tax benefits within our code, within ERISA. I mean, that I think is scary, because they are very sophisticated. They have a lot of money. They're very successful, and there is nothing wrong with private equity itself. It's a great economically efficient way to drive growth. But it's not employee ownership, it's not an ESOP. So I think that's our biggest threat, and who knew? I was just thinking about it last night. One of the things we've struggled with over the years is this brand, this ESOP brand.
Yeah.
And people used to say, I remember a few years ago, people used to say, well, ESOP, nobody knows what an ESOP is. We need a better brand that describes employee ownership. Well, now, lo and behold, someone's trying to co-opt our brand, so I guess it is valuable.
It is. What about you, Derek? What do you worry about
I'll probably answer it a little bit different. I don't know that you said what keeps me up at night. I sleep pretty good when I lay down. But I will say this. I love the work that we're doing to make sure that we stay bipartisan. We left a packed breakfast this morning. Jim, you alluded that 6+ years ago when you joined, we had 12 people at the packed breakfast. And we had roughly 100 there today. And we have someone on the left side of the aisle speaking and someone on the right. And that is just foundational to how we are structured. I love the fact that we don't care what side of the aisle you are on. We just care, do you love ESOPs? Because we love ESOPs and we have a great story to tell. So I think as long as an association, a foundation, we keep telling the good story, getting the good message across, I think we can maybe help solve some of these challenges that we face at the Capitol.
So both of you have referenced being able to tell a good story and share our ESOP journey, but you can't just tell a story. You actually have to have some proof, some evidence behind it. So maybe you talk a little bit about the role that good research and good development of policy and ideas plays in our success for the future?
Yeah,
Go for it.
I think EOF.
You don't have to raise your hand, Peter. You can just.
Yeah, EOF's all about research, right? That's our bread and butter. That's the foundation of the EOF, and has been since its inception. And I think, as you put it, Jim, we've made the case, we've proven the case that employee ownership is great for the economy, is great for employees, it's great for retention, it's great for all the things we know all about. So I think it's important that we continue to support that research. I think it's important that we maybe add on to that research some focus on the question of what truly is employee ownership, which kind of gets to my private equity concern a little bit. At what point is employee ownership significant enough? And then I've got my pet research idea, which is I'd really love to know how founders feel 5 to 10 years after their deal with an ESOP versus with selling to a strategic buyer versus private equity versus other options.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
that would be telling.
I think that area of research on founders in particular of ESOPs, both prior to an ESOP formation, because there are so many businesses that start exploring the ESOP option, but then they go a different direction.
Yeah. And
I think we need to understand more about what is inhibiting those business owners from actually forming an ESOP. I mean, we have a lot of our suspicions and pretty informed judgments, but it's not yet quite provable. And, conversely, I think that, I've talked to a lot of ESOP founders that after the transaction, I got to tell you, they're a little bit sore about it.
Yeah.
And they feel like, all right, I probably didn't get as much for my company as I thought I would. The process was really cumbersome, and now I'm kind of glad that I'm done with it, but I've got to stay involved because I had to have a seller's note. And I think you're right. It would be really interesting to see how they feel right after the transaction, 5 years after the transaction, 10 years, because I think that after the dust settles for a while, it's one of those things that founders are the most prideful about. That, boy, when I decided to leave, I did it the right way. And that might be a really useful message for us to get out a little bit.
That first year is always tough for a new ESOP. I was talking with colleagues on Advocacy Day yesterday. That first year is tough, I think, for every single ESOP, where the founder is experiencing the reality that they no longer control the company or whatever it might be. The people that worked on the deal, it's so complicated, it's so hard to explain to employees, and they're trying to understand how an ESOP works. So it's a tough first year, but I think then, looking forward, in the case of my father-in-law, it's that 5 to 10 year mark where they really realize what they've done, what they've accomplished.
All right. So, Derek, what are you most hopeful of for the future of employee ownership and ESOPs? What do you sort of look into the future and say, boy, I'm really excited about the possibility or the potential there?
Well, obviously, I would love to see the number of ESOPs grow. Speaking with our congressman this morning, why are there not more ESOPs? That's the age-old question we're trying to solve. I'd love to see ESOPs grow. I think selfishly what I would love to see are more tools provided through our companies and maybe through the association that give our remote employees and our line level employees a sense that ESOP is not a buzzword, employee ownership is not a buzzword, but it's a behavior. So how can we empower them to think, feel, act like owners? I realize I've done a poor job of communicating after this morning's session because we've always said communicate things 7 times, and then I heard you got to add a 1 to the front. It's actually 17. I do think that's a place that we can all learn and grow, but I think there's a new era where we can expand, grow, and really tool up companies to really meet all of their employee bases.
Okay. Peter, how about you? What are you most hopeful of?
I would really echo Derek's comments. I think, to me, the ESOP community is all about hope. That's what makes it such a weird and wonderful group. I think we just have to do more to make more people aware of it, and that's what the EOF's all about. And we just have to have more of it.
So we have a lot of younger people. I had a wonderful conversation last night after the reception, and one of the observations was there is a real generational transition happening within the employee ownership community, the ESOP community, not just in terms of the leaders of our companies and the leaders of the association, but also in our professional community. What words of advice would you give to those who are just now coming into the ESOP community and the association? And feel free to tell stories about how you got engaged and how you got recruited to eventually end up here.
Well, I'll share a story I shared last night. The advice is to just jump in, raise your hand, and get involved. The story I tell is, and Mike Willard, he's retiring here in a few weeks. He's back here somewhere. My very first ESOP conference, I was down in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and just sucking in all the ESOP information. First conference, had just gone through a transaction, and it was that last session of the day, and I said, you know what? There was a bar right across the street from the hotel, and a Guinness draft sounds really good right about now. So I skipped out on the graveyard session. Appreciate every professional and corporate member who has that shift. Grabbed a beer, and lo and behold, I wasn't alone. There was a guy I recognized having a beer at the bar. I said, should I introduce myself? And taking my own advice, yeah, raise your hand, get involved. I said, hey, are you with this ESOP thing? He said, as a matter of fact, I'm the president of the Carolinas chapter. And so we had a few more rounds of Guinness, and I said, I want to get involved. How do I get involved? He said, do I have a job for you? Vice president of programming at the chapter. Anybody who's had that role in their chapter knows that's a daunting task. But you know, you start there, you get to network with this great community, and you just keep saying yes. And you just keep expanding your circle. Would you do this role? Yes, because I'm learning, I'm networking, I'm growing, and I'm bringing resources back to my company by serving this great community. And that has certainly helped Freedom Advance. We've taken a lot of these from these conferences, but getting involved and keep trekking along and saying yes has helped.
Great. Peter?
For me, the big moment was Dave Fitzgerald in the Hart suit standing next to Cindy Turcotte. I actually had Cindy send me that picture last night. You know, I had never met either of them, but just listening to them talk, and you know, it was symbolic. Those of you who weren't around back then, this was 2017, and the theme of the ESOP conference, this is pre-Jim, was love my ESOP. And so, as outgoing and incoming chairs, Cindy and Dave wore white suits, head to toe, with hearts all over them. But you know, that was cute. But the words, you know, their speeches, which were completely organic, really made me realize that there's something unique about this group. And it made me want to get involved, and I started talking to people, and one thing led to another, and exactly as you said, I just kept saying yes, and every time I do, it's fun.
Right. So now, one of the roles for chair, whether it's the foundation or the association, is in many ways you're sort of the lead cheerleader for the movement. So Peter, I was wondering, do you have any experience being a cheerleader?
Oh, yeah, I was a cheerleader in college, sure.
You were? You were?
No.
What's funny is I could hear the board starting to giggle down here because they knew exactly where I was going. How about you, Derek? Do you have any experience being a cheerleader?
Let's see, is this the two truths and a lie game here?
Here we go. Here we
You know,
go.
I think I said it on stage a few years ago,
There's
but
a
yes,
photo.
I was the NC State mascot, which is Mr. Wolf. So, yep, they were on the cheer team. Thank you. I could do front flips and run to the 50-yard line and all the fun things. So I can carry a little bit of that energy into this role.
So, we've joked around a little bit over the years that maybe the ESOP Association or the ESOP world needs a little bit of a mascot. What do you guys think? Do you think we need a mascot for ESOPs? I think we might. Maybe we should put out a membership survey for what the best mascot would be for
It's a great idea.
the ESOP Association. All right. Well, listen, gentlemen, I am so excited for the next 2 years. This transition in leadership has become honestly, one of the most difficult things for me as leader of the association, because we all become such great friends, and we all do such amazing work together. That it's difficult to say goodbye to the leaders and the chairs as they're moving out, but it's also really exciting to have new partners to work with. Maybe we give another round of applause to our new leaders for the next 2 years.